Welcome to the Rings of Power podcast. We're the Lorehounds, your guides to Tolkien's world of Middle-earth. I'm David.
I'm John.
And I'm Marilyn. This is our coverage for Prime Video's original series, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, Season 2, Episode 3.
We're going to start off the podcast with our hot takes for the episode, and then we're going to get into a scene-by-scene breakdown.
If you'd like to contact us, send emails to lotr@thelorehounds.com, or if you want to join our Discord server or support the community by subscribing on Supercast or Patreon, you can go to the link tree in the show notes and find everything there.
And if you're not into recurring subscriptions, you can also find a link to our season pass, which is a great way to support the community without doing the recurring subscription. You pay $10 flat, a one-time fee. You get our online curated guide, which we call the One Guide to Rule Them All. You get the ad-free episodes. You get our weekly bonus lorecasts. And we have Marilyn's all of ad-free Rings and Rituals Season 1 in there as well, don't we, John?
We sure do.
Yes, we do.
Get them while they're hot.
And did we include the Season 1 coverage as well?
We included the Second Age.
The Second Age podcast. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Ad-free.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot of value for $10. I'm sorry.
I'm telling you.
Anyway, here we are. We are on our third night of recording. We have plowed through.
Third night, fourth podcast.
Fourth
That's
episode, right. Yes.
Because we did our Lorecast episode the other night. We talked about the power levels of the creation of Eru's creations, and we talked about all the different beings and where they sort of rank in a raw power sort of reference. And Amazon was gracious enough to provide us with screeners for these first 3 episodes.
Thank you.
And so we are being very mindful. We don't have to be mindful anymore because we're at the 3rd episode, so we can talk about the spoilers, but we were being careful all through those. And Marilyn, you're an academic and you've studied Tolkien and taught Tolkien. John, super fan. Me, casual fan. So I think we've got a good spectrum of thoughts and experiences to talk about Tolkien. If you have any more questions about any of our coverage plans, how we're going to do this, or any more information about our backgrounds, I refer you just back to episode 1 of season 2.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get right to it. John, do you want to lead us off with your hot takes for episode 3?
Still very much enjoying myself. This is, I see why they did 3 episodes for the drop. Mm-hmm. We finally touched on all the people that we need to see. And I think that's the point, right? I think you said it like this yesterday is we've been gone 2 years. Let's remember where everybody is first. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then we can keep going on an episodic weekly thing. It is a shame that it's almost half the season in one night, but you know what? I'm still really much enjoying myself. I really like where Isildur is going. I think that's becoming an interesting plot where I really didn't care about it last season. I just didn't see where they were going with Isildur last season.
Right.
Introducing him this early. Mm. I've seen a criticism going around in initial reviews since now they just came out today, the initial reviews, that I do kind of agree with, which is I think we may be introducing some people too early for them to be important. And in that case, there's not a lot for them to do right now. But even so, I am enjoying what they're giving us. And
did they give examples of who they were thinking of?
I think Isildur is one of them.
Oh,
right?
okay.
It just doesn't have a lot to do right now, so they're kind of making things up jazz hands. But that's okay. I'm still enjoying what they're doing with him.
Isildur. I can't get. Whenever I hear his name, I have to think of that.
You're thinking of Elrond there.
Yeah.
I think they brought him in, and they're doing this to show his character arc.
Yeah,
it's a long
for
arc.
Sure.
It is
exactly. I think the criticism is should they have brought him in like season 3 and then have a 3-season character arc, which might have been enough for him. I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
Say.
Because of things we'll be talking about tonight.
All right.
I think they're doing it well.
All right.
Marilyn?
I think they're doing it well. No.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very glad to be back with Númenor again. That was fine. They're continuing to spark my interest in a lot of different directions. I don't mind that sort of here and there and so forth. approach because, as you were saying, John, they're bringing us all up to speed more or less with these three all at once. And
by splitting it up, they allow us to have a satisfying arc for each character group, right?
Exactly.
In one episode instead of splitting it up over three, which might feel less satisfying.
Exactly. I'm delighted with the way that the relationship between Celebrimbor and Anatar is developing.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing all kinds of callbacks to the lore. I mean, some of it's kind of deep, but I'm seeing it there. I like how they're approaching this whole question of the different elves' responses to the idea of making rings, what their situation is, how are they going to respond to it, and why Celebrimbor trusted Anatar.
Mm-hmm.
He was all set to dismiss Halbrand, and then we get the really sneaky Sauron approach. But he's not perfect, Sauron. He does make some mistakes in this episode, or at least one that I can think of. So
okay,
it's important.
Well, we can talk about it when we're there because I picked up on that as well. There's a little bit of a oopsie.
Yeah. So I'm having a great time.
Cool. I'm still not fully there yet. But I'm there enough that I'm enjoying what we've got going on. But I kind of want to wait and see where we go with 4 and how things start to develop. I think it's a mix. I think it's a mixture of various things, and part of it is the calibration work that they're doing and the setup work that they're doing, and 3 episodes is a lot. So I don't want to. John, we mentioned it. We talked just now, and we talked about it the other day about the release schedules and stuff. Whatever. This is what we got. 3 episodes. So we just have to go with it. So I don't know. Was it a little jetpacky? It felt like, how close is Khazad-dûm to Eregion?
It's next door.
Is it? Okay.
It's literally next door.
Next door.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it's not jetpacking.
No jetpacking going on.
Okay.
Actually, that's one thing I will compliment this season on. I think much better than last season on that.
I think so too. They weren't giving the impression that it was just an afternoon stroll.
Yeah. Right.
The way they did in the first season.
Well, I'm ready to, now that we've touched on all the major plot points, I'm ready for the story to get moving forward. I mean, the forge is in place. The dwarven rings are being forged. I think that'll be some great setup. Like I said the other day, the dwarven family plot wasn't exciting me that much, but who knows? Maybe they're setting up for a bunch of stuff that's going to come this season. Maybe, of course they are.
Oh,
they're creating character. They're getting us warmed back up to the characters so that they can start to build the tension when things start to really get going. Mm-hmm. So I'm just kind of great, right? Show looks great, acting's great. Lore seems good. Like we're kind of like green lights. Dink, dink, dink. Here we go.
And the music is wonderful.
Yes, and the music is wonderful. So
nice work, Bear. I know you're a loyal listener of the pod.
Quick note, Marilyn and you and I both made notes for the opening sequence, and we were talking a little bit about it before we started recording. And I think, John, your suggestion is that we'll talk about it. We'll do some analysis on it, maybe in episode 4.
Yeah, I think that's right for 2 reasons. One, we can see if they change it by next week. Are they adding to it or not? Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, we just have so much content to cover this week that let's just put one thing off to next week.
Yeah, and it's a lot for everyone.
Works for me.
Right. It's not only a lot for us, it's a lot for everyone to watch and then listen to these things. So
if anyone on day 1 watches 3 episodes and listens to 3 podcasts by us, I will be amazed.
We ought to give him an award.
Yeah, write in, let us know.
Every bless you.
The star of merit. And dedication.
The true elf friend.
All right.
There we go.
Should we get into our scene by scene, John? You have dutifully documented the episode, and that is all in the show guide that subscribers will have access to. And if you want to get access to these 2 as well, you can see them there in the episode guides, each episode.
Yep.
And let's take it away.
Sounds good. So Marilyn renamed my first scene here when I love the new name. Beric's big adventure made me laugh a lot. Elendil releases Beric, Isildur's horse, when the horse refuses to board a ship back to Númenor. Beric rides into Mordor, fighting off orcs and spiders to find his rider in the Black Forest. There, Isildur is attacked by a giant spider before the two escape.
So, timing-wise, is this a little flashbacky? Is this like a little bit flashback and a little bit overlap? Like, I didn't...
Yeah.
That's what gave me the sense of jetpackiness.
Yeah.
This episode was... There's a lot of moving around, and I don't know what lines up with what. It doesn't matter, really. Mm-hmm. But I did feel a little bit temporally displaced.
Yeah, the first bit was definitely lifted straight from season 1.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe that him fighting with the horse was taken from season 1.
It was. And then Beric dashing off across the field. That was the end of the season 1 parts. So we can just, with our imagination, say a lot of time passed.
Right.
And then...
little hand wavy.
He runs into some rather unfriendly orcs.
What do you guys make of the Uruk in this scene? That I think, from my standpoint, the practical costuming and makeup
fantastic.
Is on point.
Oh yeah. They're just knocking it out of the park for sure.
Yeah.
And I really like that they're making Beric such a character in himself, because the Númenorians were known to be super bonded to their horses, right?
Absolutely.
They had these like insane bonds with horses in a way that the men of Middle-earth never did. So having Isildur have this close relationship with Beric, and having Beric be able to sense where he is and fight off orcs, I mean, that's straight out of the lore right there.
Yeah, definitely. Though I didn't realize that Númenorian horses were so intelligent that they could actually shake off ropes that were looped around their necks.
Yes, I did clock that as well.
Having ridden horses myself, when I saw him running off was, oh my God, he's going to break his legs. He's going to get all tangled with that rope. And the next time we see him, it's gone. So, all right.
He rubbed on a tree and, it broke it loose.
Right.
Don't doubt the powers of Beric.
I do not. I do not.
When I very first watched this episode and this scene, I kind of groaned a little bit. I was like, oh, but then I was like, well, maybe I should check in. And John, you just confirmed it, that Númenorian horses are, plus,
they're
just like deal. Númenorians are. Yeah.
Yes,
so,
they are. They are.
Needed a lore check on that.
Particularly once they've made that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the showrunners, correct me if I'm wrong, they confirmed that this is baby Shelob, right?
Yes, they did. And also, it was confirmed by Bear when he was talking with another musician, Jordan Rennells, who's making beautiful soundscapes.
I hope that that's as much Shelob as we get in this entire show.
I agree. It was, okay, I get it. You're trying to show all the favorite things that people know and say, oh, yes, I remember this, and kind of get people settled back and comfortable in Middle-earth again. But let's not overdo it. This was okay.
David, did the Memberberry work for you as someone who is not steeped in the lore?
A fan of Memberberry.
I figured it was Shelob, and it didn't bother me. I felt a little bit like I was watching a scene out of the Alien franchise movies. It's very much that. And we just obviously had the Alien Romulus, and we just did a whole bunch of special projects around Alien. So go check out those podcasts. So I was like, oh, this is like Alien. But then I was wondering how much Marilyn was peeking through her fingers at some of these scenes.
No, this was dark enough that it didn't matter.
Okay, physically.
They seem to really love their squelches.
They were very squelchy.
Sauron was so squelchy to begin with, and now we have squelchy, eggs, spider eggs, and blood on his fingers and all that kind of stuff. But it was also dark and monochrome that it.
I will agree that maybe this is a character, quote unquote, with Shelob being introduced so early. Like what are we doing here? Mm-hmm. And I guess the more that I think about it, and if you ask that question, John, it was fine. It was okay. The CGI was okay. It looked like CGI, but it was good CGI. And then if we don't do any more with it, I think you're right. I think that would be a better thing, just to leave that there. And we just know they just planted that. And maybe in one of the later seasons, something happens, but we don't need anything in the next couple of seasons.
And for those who are saying, wait a minute, Shelob was a lot bigger than that. Let's just remember that we're a couple thousand years before
exactly
she encounters Frodo and Sam. So that's what they were aiming for, basically. Little confusing that the orcs were saying, oh, he's going into the Black Forest and nobody comes out alive from there. Of course, we know that Shelob eventually took her abode in Cirithungol, Spider's Lair. So, I don't know. Maybe a fun thing.
And what's a lore check on the Black Forest? Is that a place? Or is
that is not anything I'm familiar
I've never
with.
heard that before.
I mean, they make cuckoo clocks in Germany in the Black Forest. That's my association with the Black Forest.
And
Sorry,
cake.
Germany. Sorry, Germany. I'm not dissing on you in any way, shape, or form. I love the cuckoo clocks. I had one as a child, or our family did.
To me, this is a sort of reference for both Lord of the Rings movie fans, book fans, but also people who are fans of the Silmarillion, because there is a forest full of the spawn of Ungoliant, full of spiders.
Yes.
Nan Dungortheb.
Okay.
That was in Beleriand, which is no longer with us. And so I think this is sort of trying to allude to, so this is a journey that Beren had to take to get into Doriath to find Luthien. So I think, and it was supposed to be so terrible that he would never speak of it again.
Okay.
He would never speak of his experience going through the spider forest.
He was the only one who made it through without going mad. So props.
Right. So I think this is trying to do both here. This is trying to be member berries for those who are deep in the Silmarillion, member berries for those who are deep into the Lord of the Rings movies and books.
Got it.
For one.
Okay.
Good pull, I think.
Yeah.
And I did really enjoy Isildur just holding the two fangs, the pincers, and trying to fight them off. That was a really great moment, I thought.
Was that a little Jacksonian?
It was. It was absolutely a callback to Sam doing exactly the same thing with a very much larger Shelob. So, all right, fine. How else are spiders of that shape and size going to attack?
Right. Is rodents of unusual size, anyone?
Good one. Nice.
5 points, John.
All right, a funeral for a king is next. Elendil pays his respects to Tar Palantir when Eärien calls him out for not mourning Isildur. She has a flashback to a conversation with the late king when he said the island will fall, but there is still time. Miriel arrives to grieve her father, and Elendil aids her in identifying the attendees, such as Lord Belzagar from the north. A woman attacks Miriel, who responds with kindness instead of violence.
So, Eärien, make Númenor great again, kind of thing. Is that the vibes that we're getting here?
She's had her YouTube algorithm messed with, and now she's been a little red-pilled.
Yeah.
She also lost her mother when she was younger than 10. Lost her older brother, has lost her younger brother, and was not really enthusiastic about going to war in Middle-earth in the first place. And she's dating, the opposer's daughter. So what can son. So what can you say?
Right. I mean, who has not witnessed a teenager adopting the values of the family that they marry into, date into, rather than their own, right? Who has been? I mean, she was raised with Mr. Faithful over here, Elendil, who's very much for, hey, our history is with the elves. Let's honor that. And also, it's so much easier to be angry than to grieve, right?
Oh yes, absolutely.
And so here she's using her anger to direct her grief at Miriel instead of being and her father instead of just grieving her brother. She yells at him. You're not even saying Isildur's name because she feels like if she can be angry, if she can do something about the politics, she can do something to make his life more meaningful. But it's never going to pan out for her.
It feels like somewhat of a steep change for me, but that could be because we just haven't spent as much time with Númenor as we have with other plot lines. So the ritual of placing the seashell on the bier was just beautiful. I will certainly have a lot to say that in the future in another podcast.
Yeah, I have that with an exclamation point here, funeral ritual for MRP in my notes.
I also really like the way that Elendil is filling Miriel in on the political currents.
Yeah.
I mean, that would happen, but to actually, witness it in action is good. And I just love the scene with grieving mother. and Muriel's compassion for her.
I have to say, in all of this, there's a lot of lassitude towards outbursts towards the ruler. She strikes her later on. Somebody yells at her. I mean, in other, I would think in other circumstances, those people would be taken up in arms at a minimum, if not struck down on the spot. Like to assault the regent or whatever the status of the ruler is, coronated or not. It seemed a little bit lax to me. So, but maybe that's Númenorian culture.
Yeah. The parent of the people. I don't know if that's a notion that we can overlay on the Númenorian monarchy. The whole presentation of the monarchy here is interesting. It does strike me as being less formal than in the texts. So I think that's maybe part of what you're picking up on, David, and I agree with you.
Although she's not queen yet, as we learn later.
Yeah.
She's Queen Regent right now. But to me, I mean, this is Muriel taking up the same pathos that I was just talking about, right? Is understanding that the anger is coming from grief, not from true rage. And she, like, immediately the woman melts when given the opportunity to grieve, when being invited to grieve. And I think Muriel just has a really excellent emotional intelligence that you don't always see in rulers.
Indeed, she does, and I'm afraid that people are not valuing it at its worth.
Well, and when you're playing against Farazone, she's not playing. They're not playing the same game, right? No, she's trying to play honest and straight, and he's already several steps ahead.
And Farazone certainly has a fair amount of emotional intelligence too. It's just how they use it.
Yeah. Yeah, people can use emotional intelligence for good and evil, for sure.
A tool.
And, witness a certain slimy secret being who is currently lodged in a region.
Well, let's move on to Farazone's scene.
Quick question, which I guess we can talk about. I was just curious about who this Lord of from the North is, and are they talking about the north of Númenor, and then that's far enough away that those Northerners, they're so different than us.
It's a big island. It's a big island. I mean, this is a full nation, not just Long Island, where I'm from.
I think I remember correctly that they said that the island of Númenor, in size, approached the landmass of Beleriand. Wow. Now that sounds overlarge to me. So that might have been an earlier idea that was later discarded. But it is very big. And I believe that the Northland is referring to the northern point. If you remember, Númenor
it's like a star.
Shaped like a star. So we're talking about the upright point would be the folk from the north.
Because whenever I see depictions on any of the maps that I find online, because everything that you find online is accurate and true and correct.
Absolutely.
Númenor is definitely not as big as Beleriand. So,
no, but there was something that they wanted to indicate that it was a lot larger than a lot of people seem.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. And there is a whole thing with the geography, as in the Númenorians start off on the west coast with their capital of Raminna, I believe it was called at that time, and they end up on the east coast,
right?
And that move signifies a break with the Valar and the break with the elves, because west is where the Valar are. That's where the Undying Lands are. And when they move east, they're looking more towards Middle-earth, and they're looking away from the Valar and away from the elves of Tol Eressëa.
Right.
So, I mean, I think there certainly will be nobles of different areas. And I think they kind of explicitly tell us here that this character is going to be more aligned with Farazone than with Muriel.
Right. Well, and they certainly
factions building.
When they're talking, there's a boom, boom, boom kind of music in the background that's very distinctive. So it's very, very queued up to be conspiratorial.
And his name really made me think of Beelzebub. So I can't say for sure if this is a name taken from the lore. It's certainly not one I've ever remember hearing before. So
right. Feels like a show creation, doesn't it?
I think it is, but listeners, write in if you know otherwise.
No.
Okay.
All right, so Farazone, he's starting trouble here. He's just starting to nudge things in the direction he wants it to go. He gives Muriel a choice of color. Muriel examines her father's possessions before Pharazôn arrives to give her a choice of gown color. He insists she wear red at her coronation for Númenor's future, but she chooses white in honor of her father, which Pharazôn calls the past. Well, I didn't write it in the summary, but she calls it humble, right? Humbler.
Yes.
Which was interesting.
Yes, and he wants her to wear red, which is like, I don't know, man. You guys are really putting your finger right on the modern political context right now. So,
and interestingly enough, I just realized we saw Muriel first in black, and now we're talking about red or white. And red, white, and black are the goddess colors in contemporary goddess thought. So you have white is maiden, red is woman, and black is crone. So I'm pretty certain that they did not intend that meaning, but
right.
I think also he says red like the sun, and to me, the sun comes from the east, right? And that's the way that they're turning now. And the white is closer to the color of starlight.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, that works.
Which is more elvish.
Right. Right.
So I think that's all. What is this behind her back that she's hiding, though?
It's bracelet. The key to unlock the door to the tower where the Palantir is supposed to be, that she finds is not.
That's it.
Yeah, that was a little bit of an interesting timey-wimey thing that I wasn't fully sure where they were going with that. Like how that sequence of events happened.
Okay. Anyway, when did it take place?
When did the Palantir?
Oh, when did it disappear?
Get stolen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Well, let's talk about that scene, and we can combine all this discussion because I think it'll be easier that way.
Also, want to just point out, I think it was in this scene, but it might not have been. They do establish that they are cousins.
Yes, Muriel and Pharazôn. Yeah, doesn't she say like cousin, or he say? I forget. Somebody
One of them says cousin.
Yeah,
I think it was Pharazôn, but they hadn't established that clearly at this up until this point. So it's definitely from the lore.
Yes,
kind of hoping they wouldn't go there in case they do the whole marriage thing, but from things I've seen, I think they're going in a different direction, which I'm just glad about.
Well, Muriel was in a very different position too, with like she wasn't queen regent at the time of in the writings. She just was the heir.
Mm-hmm.
And she's not the first queen of Númenor either. Númenor has a long tradition of kings and queens of both genders.
Started with Aldarian's daughter, because that was the only child he had. And he was the one who changed the law. He was the mariner. If you know the story, The Mariner's Wife, from Unfinished Tales, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. And he was the one who first made long voyages back to Middle Earth, and to work with the elves in Lindon and so on, and with Círdan. So
yeah, I think we might be due for. I think I talked about it in season 1 a little bit, but some Eldarian and Horrendous talk at some point on a Lorecast.
Oh, that would be fun.
So let me bring in the rest of the gang in Númenor so we can talk about this plot all together. Kemen complains to a table of soon-to-be conspirators about the lack of fitness of Muriel to rule. Belzegar encourages Pharazôn to assert his claim, but Valandil arrives to defend the Queen Regent. Eärien is convinced to tell them of the Palantir, and Muriel tries to find it, but it's missing.
So, dun dun dun, missing Palantir. Is
missing,
there?
But not really.
I can't, because I didn't do a season 1 rewatch recently. Did we have indication from season 1 of her? I don't remember her discovering it. I guess that's my.
Yeah, it was right towards the end of season 1 where she's sketching the king's face and he becomes conscious.
Mm-hmm.
Thinks she's Muriel and tells her, go up the tower and look in the Palantir.
Okay.
This is a recurring trope here of misunderstanding who's talking to you on your deathbed.
Seriously.
Well, House of the Dragon, that was the major. That was the
right. That was the whole initiating event. Right.
Yeah.
So we don't actually see Eärien uncovered entirely. We see her reach out and lift the veil on it, and then we cut away.
Okay.
So we don't know, did she look in it? Did she see something? What was her experience? And we still don't really know, but I find it interesting. She describes it as finding something secret, dangerous, forbidden.
Right.
Yeah.
And boy, does that remind me of Pandora's box. The woman being given the treasure and told never to open it. And so she opens it anyway, and out flies all of the troubles that have troubled humans ever since. And the only thing that's left in the box after she claps the lid on top of it is hope.
Right.
Yeah. Keep it secret. Keep it safe.
Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, it's just so sad to see this society devolve into really demonizing elvish artifacts when they learned all of their crafts basically from the elves.
Hello.
That's the whole point of their society, is that they were a little closer to elves than men. Their first ruler was half elf.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot that they wouldn't know how to do now.
Mm-hmm.
If it hadn't been for the elves, which Galadriel rather not tactfully tries to point out to them.
And there's also a big departure from the lore, because Palantiri were all over Númenor in the books.
Mm-hmm.
This was not like one Palantir was in Númenor. There were many. And that's why there are several in Middle-earth during the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, they're really adapting the PJ interpretation of Palantiri. So it's annoying, but there it is.
It's
so
all right.
They're not going to change it.
In the room, there are several artifacts in the Palantir room up the top of the spire there.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about them a bit last year or a couple of years ago when we were covering, when we were doing some lore work, or at least they got talked about. But I noticed that there were three things that we could see in this particular shot. Some sort of book or scroll that looked very heavy and big, very Talmudic in some ways. There was some sort of decoration that was some sort of a bird or a swan that was in a bit of a heart shape. It's too small to be a shield, but maybe something that you would, I don't know. I don't know what objective it was. And then there was a sword. Now, I couldn't remember if the sword is Narsil or not, if that was confirmed from season 1, but I was trying to I don't recall what those other two things were. I don't know if either of you had points of view on them.
I can't remember what the identification of the sword was. I remember somebody did say, oh, yes, this is such and such because of so-and-so. And I'm not sure if that's been confirmed. But I do believe that, in fact, that is a shield because it matches the device that Tuor picked up in Vinyamar when he was instructed by Ulmo to go and put on the armor and take up the weapons that had been left in this deserted elvish stronghold.
Okay.
And then go to Gondolin, that he would send him a guide to take him to the secret city. And that when Turgon saw him wearing these things, he would realize that, yes, this is someone who has come from Ulmo. His story is true. I should listen to it. But maybe I won't anyway. Because reasons. Basically not wanting to give up his realm, loving too much the work of his hands, which was Ulmo's warning to him not to do. Mm-hmm. So they describe these very specifically as having a swan's wing.
Okay.
And swans are associated with his journey and so forth. So that's how I've interpreted it.
Right. And I think even in season 1, there were more artifacts in that room that we saw.
Yes.
So.
I think we saw somebody or other's axe, probably implied to be Hurin's axe, which would have been extraordinary because he was, overwhelmed by orcs and hauled away by Balrogs and set in a chair by Morgoth, and I don't know who was supposed to have gone to the battlefield and rescued the axe.
There was a cleanup from the new
Jazz hands, we'll wave it.
Well, it's certainly the showrunners having a little fun, a little wink, and a nod.
Definitely. See, we do know our lore.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, did either of you feel that Eärion's adoption into the inner circle was a bit abrupt?
I don't think so, because there was also a period of we didn't see them while the Númenorians were in Middle Earth, right? And presumably there was a decent amount of time between that.
For me, it doesn't. I didn't find it. Yeah, no, I didn't find it jarring at all. It seemed natural enough. They signaled it early enough in the episode, and then so that when she's there with the conspirators, I didn't feel like it was jarring. So.
Oh, well, I knew that her change of heart had happened, but to be so close to the inner circle was what I was kind of questioning. But it is true that Kemen introduced her to Farazon, and she was picked to do the tomb work. So I guess they were, seeding these little hints. But oh my gosh, the last time we saw her, she was, I guess, just more on the edge of it, and now she's just right deep in, and everybody's listening eagerly to everything she has to say.
A conspirator.
Yeah.
So a little bit of heavy foreshadowing as well here is plain enough for today, right?
Yeah. I thought that was good dialogue, though. All of that interaction, I thought that was, the way that Valendiel is like, hey, the queen lost her sight saving your brother.
Yes.
I mean, even though she wasn't successful, she sacrificed a big part of herself in that effort.
Right.
This is a monarch who cares for the people.
Right.
And puts herself on the line to prove. In fact, think back to the speech that she made when she announced she was going to go. I will not ask any Númenorian to go into danger that I will not go into myself. Therefore, I will escort Galadriel back to Middle-earth.
Meanwhile, Farazon sits at home,
hanging out in the pubs,
and consolidating power. Right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I love a good sedition brewing in a pub. Sorry, that was awkward construction, but
No, I'd rather have the ale, except I wouldn't really because I don't drink.
I think I could see Farazon doing a Tevier thing about tradition in Númenor. I think he could pull it off.
I just see him counting logs from forests.
All right, so let's go on to Adar. Adar's followers try to convince him not to go to war against Sauron, but he insists it's necessary to ensure Sauron's defeat. Adar recruits Damrod, hill troll of the arid Mithrin.
That was an interesting twist. I was not expecting that at all. It was pretty cool. Yeah, talk about a big boy.
We saw a lot of behind the scenes of Bear McCreary bringing in metal artists to sing and to bang on drums and so forth for cool. Damrod's music.
Yeah, the intro music for it was definitely cool. One of his honorifics was Eater of Dragon Bones. I was like, oh.
That was cool.
Yeah.
I was like, because dragons, correct me if I'm wrong, they're present, but they don't feature regularly in Tolkien's world, right? I mean, we have Smaug.
They're mostly gone at this point.
Right.
Yeah. They were a lot more common in earlier days, and they kind of tended to stick in one region generally. But
did he write a lot about them? Are there a lot of stories about dragons and such?
Well, in the first age, in Silmarillion, their invention by Morgoth was a major event.
All right.
And we have
maybe
Laurung, who curses all of Hurin's family and enacts the curse, and then Calagan the Black, who's supposed to be the size of a 747, and no, they're significant, but more in the first age than in the second.
Let me know when you get to that chapter, John.
It's coming. Well, Marilyn has already claimed it, so
okay.
But you can come on.
Okay,
it's your podcast too.
Exactly.
You do what you want.
I just want to talk about Turin Turambar. So
okay. I was going to have you come on too when I talk to Maester Anthony on my third podcast on Baron and Luthien.
Which you, David or me?
David.
You. Okay.
Oh, me. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Because Baron and Luthien's a good story, and I know you like talking to Maester Anthony.
Big stuff.
So
I know you can come on too, Marilyn, if you want.
Oh, sure.
It's a party.
If you're willing to have that long of an episode, great. I'd love to.
It's a party.
Damrod certainly has some animus for Sauron. So what's up with that?
I wondered myself, David. This is an entirely new character.
Where's Sauron? Yeah. Was that like a good thing or a bad thing? Like I want to eat his bones thing, or like you called me here, but you're not really the boss. I think they left it
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I took it as he hates him. I think the whole point of all these characters is they're like, we're so tired of these bosses who don't care about us.
Yeah.
Can we just live in peace? And they just want to get rid of anybody who might stomp on them.
Although let us also recognize that Damrod is delivering the head of the messenger that Adar sent back to the feet of Adar. I'm not sure that I would use the word caring in this context. Yeah. And Adar is clearly upset, but is smart enough to just not bring it up, right?
Arid Mithrin is where?
That's a great question. I don't know.
I'm trying to remember. It's a mountain range.
Okay.
The Grey Mountains. Yeah.
Grey. Grey Mountains. Okay, so the Grey Mountains would be
it's the north,
the north part of Mordor, I think.
It
the northern
connects with the
range?
Misty Mountains. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's way up at the top then. Yes, it would have to be because they were talking about trolls.
Yeah.
And the Ettenmoors are north of.
And it does say Doran's folk, dragons, and orcs all lived there.
Right.
So dragons were there.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Mm-hmm. I was going to say this Uruk who had expressed doubts earlier, we see him now. He has a child.
Yes, he has a family, an orc family setting, and there will be some interest with some of our Rings and Rituals listeners because this topic actually came up in a question. So,
yeah, and I think it goes into that whole thing too of can, is anyone redeemable? Is everyone redeemable? Tolkien struggling with orcs and how he conceived of them. And there's even a big conversation there has been. And I think it feels like it's more resolved than it was within the D&D community, where the sort of idea of bioessentialism, it's like, well, that's just an evil race and they're always evil. And people are like, really? Like, are we really doing this? Mm-hmm. And we've come around now, and it's like pretty much like orcs are now player character playable races. Can I say that right? You can play an orc as a player character, and it's not an essentially evil thing that's just to be a target for the heroes to mow down. Mm-hmm. And it's been interesting to see that conversation resolve itself within the community over time.
Yeah.
Nobody told Baldur's Gate, though.
No, I find that fascinating. And I'd love to know what Tolkien thought of it, because he really did struggle with the whole question of what you said, David, are orcs redeemable? And they seem to be setting Adar and his Uruks to contrast with what I am guessing will be the orcs that Sauron develops after he's done with all the ring making and starts to expand his power. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that a lot of those of Adar's Uruks are going to survive. Because Adar, of course, literally means father. And so here we see another orc father, which is quite fascinating. And again, I think this particular orc, because he looks more elvish than some of his other fellow orcs, was one of the originals. Maybe not one of the 13 with Adar, but one of the very, very early
on,
ones to be tortured into conversion. So they are forming a family, not just those three, but this whole group. They've got their father and they've got their land, and I really understand why a lot of them are saying, look, let's just stay here.
And this orc also, Adar says to him, kind of confides in him, he's saying, like, we're, until we know that Sauron is dead, we have to be...
Right.
The implication being we have to be a little bit more, we have to range beyond our local area here.
And even when he says it is the son's place to trust the father.
That was a good line.
I mean, whoever imagined orcs saying that to one another?
Yeah, and I'm wondering if are we working on vampire rules? If Adar gets killed, do his orcs turn back into elves and humans? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. No vampire rules here. They're corrupted.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
So let's go to the Dwarven Rings segment. So Celebrimbor offers rings of power to Doran 4 and Disa in exchange for Mithril. Doran expresses doubts about Sauron, believing he is not truly a friend of Elrond. Disa tries to convince Doran to bring the offer to Doran 3. After they leave, Anatar tells Celebrimbor Gil-galad does not want rings given to other peoples of Middle-earth. And Celebrimbor sends a message to the High King to say he's shutting down the forge.
I think in the back half of this scene, is this where you thought Sauron made a little oopsie step?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Really? I thought this was brilliant. But he made Celebrimbor think it's his own idea to lie to his own High King.
I thought that was a pivot. I think he led on. That was my interpretation. Is he led on a little bit more? Oopsie. And then he's like, crap. What do I say? What do I say? What do I say? Oh, here we go. Here's my play.
Right.
And then he turned it on him.
Right.
Okay.
He was misinterpreting the relationship between Elrond and Durin.
Yeah.
And that sets Durin up right away. Now, Celebrimbor might not have been as aware of that. Although he probably was, because he was at that dinner when Prince Durin, the famous table scene. So he would have known something about the relationship between Elrond and Prince Durin. But
I did really enjoy when Durin goes, Elrond wouldn't say that. He'd never be that nice.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. And so here's Sauron thinking he knows everything about everyone, and suddenly finding out, maybe I don't. And also, I love the ways in which this mirrors what Tolkien said about the dwarves being stubborn and therefore less susceptible to corruption.
Right.
And less controllable.
Yeah, I thought that too. You can't sugar talk dwarves like you can talk men.
Well,
that's right.
You can entice them with wealth, for sure.
You could entice them with wealth,
the right
and power.
If you're using the right. And he was using the wrong thing. He was trying to stroke his ego.
Right.
So
which works beautifully on Celebrimbor, let us say.
And I think to the point that he doesn't even. I got the sense that Sauron was a little surprised at the size of Celebrimbor's ego here, or the length that Celebrimbor would go, and I think that's kind of where I think the misstep came in. He didn't realize, wow, this guy Celebrimbor really has a high opinion of himself. I mean, more than I thought that he did. That's the kind of way I was interpreting it.
I mean, to me, we didn't get a smirk or anything, but to me, I thought internally Sauron was like, oh yeah. Now he's even severing his bonds with Gil-galad. Now I don't even have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah. Well, he found his way in. I mean, I'm not sure if Gil-galad doesn't even know that Anatar is there, which Anatar himself says. How is he supposed to know all about what the king is up to and what the king is feeling and thinking? I mean, that was a little slippy to me.
Well, I think the idea was he's doing like, I really shouldn't tell you what they were saying at the council, but they were saying this, and I didn't really agree with it, but things were said, right? Use the passive voice. Things were said.
Yeah, definitely. But what council? When?
I'm saying because he said that he was in Lindon and it worked, and didn't he basically imply that he was sent from Lindon?
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't read that he was actually sent, but I guess you're right. Maybe I'm just forgetting it.
He now says, "Oh well, they don't actually know I'm here." But he did say he did definitely say he was in Lindon in the first episode that he talks to Celebrimbor.
Okay. Yeah, I'm starting to remember that now. What I think in this scene is most notable is that this is really the most strong and open sign that Celebrimbor is a descendant of Feanor.
Oh yeah,
it's the pride
to the core.
It's the pride of the creator, and that pride of the creator is a definite point of doom as far as Tolkien is concerned.
And he's the last descendant of Feanor in Middle Earth.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely think we saw a little bit of Feanor. I think last season, I think I said this last episode too. I feel like I'm in Groundhog's Day a little bit, but I think last season. We saw him a lot more like, oh, yes, we'll do this little thing. But now we definitely see what his core is, which is I want to do something great. I want to be remembered. And boy, will he be remembered.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately for not exactly what he thinks.
Right.
And I think it is that fact of accomplishment. I've finally done it. My whole life, I have worked for this moment, and finally I have it, and no one is going to take it from me.
Right.
I mean,
and here's the genius of Sauron here, is that he both allows Celebrimbor to stroke his own ego, and he gives him a plausible, noble cause, which is Middle Earth is crumbling, and you are the one to save it.
Yeah. Look how well it worked for the elves already.
He's like, well, Gil-galad is the Huber Hubery. Gil-galad is the proud one. It's been a long week, guys. Gil-galad is the proud one. He's the one trying to keep solutions away from the other peoples of Middle Earth. You're the one for the people. You're the hero of Middle Earth. I mean, that's just exactly what he wants to hear.
Though, of course, in the first instance, the minute that it's suggested to Celebrimbor that they make rings for humans, he's definitely not for that.
Yeah. Doesn't have a good opinion of... Yeah.
No, humans are corruptible. No, we didn't. No human.
Right.
No rings for humans.
But he's working on it. Avatar's working on it.
For sure.
Right.
Just make a few extra rings. Don't worry about what happens with them.
By the way, I just looked up Arid Mithrin. It is at the very top of Mirkwood, and it's at the top of the Anduin River. It's basically the headwaters of the...
Yes, the Grey Mountains. At the far eastern end of them is the Iron Hills, and that's where Dain's people come from. So I remember now. Thank you.
It's a long way to go for our big fine friend there to walk down.
That's like 3 steps.
He's got large strides. David, very large strides.
That's a stroll. All right, let's go to a quick break, actually, before we get back to the episode. And we're back. Isildur meets a friend. Isildur finds the remains of the Númenorian army before he is attacked by a woman in waiting named Estrid. They realize they're on the same side and begin to travel together to Pelargir. On the way, they're caught in a trap made by maybe some wild men. Who wrote this? Oh, Marilyn. Possibly some wild men. That's what Arondir says. The followers of Adar, that's what I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're the one, they steal the horse and they take it back to their camp and they're...
Right.
I think they're escapees from Adar. I don't think that they are loyal to him.
No, I think they're trying to capture people for his enslavement.
Well, could be. I just didn't read it that way. And Arondir says later on that the wild men are everywhere and you have to watch out for them. So on.
Interesting.
And so on.
But then when they go to steal the horseback, that's when the they have to, what's his name shows he doesn't have the same scar. Theo doesn't have the same scarring.
Right.
That's true. So
right.
Anyway, just to finish the scene recap, the followers steal Beric, but Isildur and Estrid escape with the help of Arondir.
So we on episode 2, we talked a little bit about the is this too close of a Jacksonian call out? And I was curious if the drinking from the waters was a little bit too dead marshes for you guys.
Oh, interesting. Hadn't even occurred to me.
Yeah, I didn't even.
Really?
Didn't even cross my mind.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because the in the movies, seeing all the bodies just under the surface there, this was exactly what Isildur was looking at. Which, now that I think about it, that's an interesting callback because obviously Isildur is later involved in a whole lot of battles that
make those
marshes, right?
Right.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Wow, look at that. Gosh, I figured something out on my own.
Well done. No, I just figured it was a very good way for him to get some boots and a sword, which he's going
Fair
to need.
enough. Right.
Yeah, that was my reading. Okay.
He does find a saddle in the thing where she's hiding. So at first I was like, how did he get a saddle? And then on my second watch, I picked it up.
Yeah.
They can just fabricate them because they're just that good with horses.
Yeah, exactly. I would not be wanting to drink any water in sort of a Mordor region.
Oh, Lord, no.
That would just be instantly bad. But I guess maybe he's Númenorian, so his intestinal
fortitude
is stronger than the average man.
One thing I'll say is I really liked the way that they dealt with the medical issue of like, wait, am I supposed to take it out? No, wait, I'm not sure I'm supposed to take it out.
It was funny.
That was great. I thought the dialogue was really fun. I was kind of charmed by their interaction right away. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I'm liking them from the very beginning. And,
Did either of you read the sexual undertones in this? She's like working on his crotch, and he's grabbing the wheel thing in a very like. I read a lot of sexual tension in that little setup. So
I didn't, but
yeah,
good for you.
You do you, David. You do you.
It was there. It seemed pretty present to me there. So
Well, it very well could be. I think at this point, Isildur was more concerned with surviving.
He was concerned with a different kind of penetration.
Oh, John.
Well, and about getting stabbed, I was a little bit nervous where they put that, because that's the femoral artery area there, and he could have easily
they were both
bled out.
lucky.
They should have moved it over a little bit. That seemed a little bad spot. So they're headed to Pelargir. Thank you. Gosh, it has been a long week. It's only middle of the week.
Yes.
Little lore check on that. What can we say about that? Because it's an old Númenorian settlement.
Sure is. They settled. I think this was actually around the time of Aldarion, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was the southernmost, I believe, of all the harbors that he established. He was more. There was one between Pelargir and Lindon, which got destroyed a number of times in the course of his absences.
Yeah.
And there might have been more, but those are the three that I'm most familiar with.
Yeah, and Aldarion started basically the tradition of, so the men of Middle-earth had basically been forsaken by the Valar and a lot of the elves at the end of the First Age. So Aldarion started going over to Middle-earth and bringing the Númenorian technology and being like, all right, here's how to like do food safety and farm and things like that. Like, I think he did a lot of good work, and then the subsequent generations of Númenorian did a lot of really good work in sort of teaching the men of Middle-earth both forgotten and new technologies. And later, that kind of stops, right? The Númenorians stop going over there so much, and they kind of forget what they were doing. And that's why this Pelargir outpost has become kind of abandoned.
Right.
Yeah. They're somewhat derelict. Yeah, I think Aldarion was mostly interested in establishing harbors and a seafaring culture, because he was thinking in terms of, okay, it's a big island, but it's limited, and our population is only growing.
Right.
So we need to have places to go to. And by the way, sure, we can give some aid to the folks, the humans here, who are clearly having a hard time of it. But he was also very much engaged, I believe, with Gil-galad when Gil-galad recognized that Sauron seemed to be stirring again and taking shape. And that this would affect both of them, because he was of old the enemy of both of their peoples. How much of that is going to show up here, I don't know. But I think it was probably subsequent generations that really got going on the, bringing agriculture and so on. And let's not forget the Entwives. The Entwives are rumored to have taught culture to humans. Taught agriculture to humans.
Interesting.
Because they were interested in planting gardens and so forth. And they're often represented as harking back to sheaves of grain and so forth.
If you want a quick summary of the Aldarion and Arendis plotline, just listen to the song Brandy by Looking Glass.
Don't know it.
Really? It's a whole song about a man who's in love with a woman, but he's like, no, the sea keeps calling me, so I have to keep
the song
going back.
Marilyn.
Well,
you know
there
the
you
song.
go.
You know the song, Brandy.
Brandy, you're a fine girl. What a good wife you would be, but my life, my love, and my lady are the sea.
Interesting. I wonder if
it's
the
very
author
much
was
Aldarion
a Tolkien
and Arendis.
fan.
Yeah,
That's funny. I never made that connection. That's funny.
Yeah.
Too bad Aldarion didn't have the wisdom and the emotional intelligence to say that.
Exactly. Yeah.
From
He did
the
a lot of
beginning.
stringing along of Arendis. But Arendis does have, there's even references to Arendis in the fact that she's the one who started the tradition of wearing the jewel on the forehead,
right,
as the ruler of Númenor rather than a crown.
Yes.
And we still have that with Miriel.
Mm-hmm.
And she wears a big one during her coronation as well.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What do we think of Arondir's return?
Heartbreaking.
Rather explosive.
Yeah, so let's bring in Bronwyn's plot line here, just to discuss that all along. Yeah, all together. Sure. So the next one is called Goodbye, Bronwyn. Isildur follows Arondir to Pelargir, where he holds a funeral pyre for Bronwyn. Theo lights the pyre and weeps. So we know this was the actor's choice not to come back.
Yes.
I don't know that I was following that news. Can maybe recap it really quick if there's a detail or two that you can share?
She just announced shortly before the season she had chosen not to come back to pursue other things.
Okay. Interesting.
Mostly what she was pursuing is activism.
Okay. Actually, I think she said that was unrelated.
Oh, okay.
In the end, it was she just didn't want to come back to the show, which that's a shame.
Huh.
It's interesting. So that's a bit of a scramble to rewrite, because that's one of the things that I remember, season 1 making some waves, is because the elf-human relationship is such a special thing, and there's only a handful of them, and it was a big deal that they were doing it on television.
Yeah, well, that could have contributed eventually to the ancestral line of Prince Imarhill in the Third Age, because his family line was supposedly had elvish connection, which is why he was beardless. Well, but I gotta say, from the very beginning of season 1, I said, please don't kill off Bronwyn and make Theo into a Nazgul.
Mm-hmm.
The whole Anakin story all over again. Come on, folks.
I don't think that was the intention. I think this was probably...
No, I don't. I think this was the best they could make with the fact that they were losing this major character. Interesting, though, that they chose to recast Adar, and they did not choose to recast
that's a really
Bronwyn.
good point. They did not recast her.
I think it's probably about how central that plot line was, right?
Well, it's also the famous dead mother trope.
Yeah.
Which I can talk more about.
The woman always dies trope,
a following scene.
Right. Well, and then that it traumatizes the kid, and then that kid goes on and becomes a pivotal plot point.
I find myself hoping that at some point they're going to have a flashback in which Theo remembers his mother saying to him, "Find the light, and the darkness will not find you."
Mm-hmm.
So it could still go either way, particularly given the relationship that develops between Theo and Isildur.
Of characters that we know will develop, we have the Nazgul, of course, but and I think Theo's a contender for that, but I think he's also a contender for the King of the Grey Host.
Yes,
that's where I see him most, and where I hope he will wind up,
because that's a redemption arc, at least in the end.
Exactly.
I did stumble upon a Reddit thread about that today. I was looking for some. I was looking for a symbol of the Southland, the King of the Southlands, because I wanted to look at it compared to the opening credits to see if there was some visual things there. But it's something else, and I figured out what it was. But anyway, there it was. There was like, oh yeah, and there's the guy with the crown, and it's him, and da da da. And I was like, okay, I gotta go. I can't read this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you're dear listener, if you're trying to recall Peter Jackson, remember Aragorn goes through the mountains and he's like, hey, I summon you to fulfill your oath, and then the Grey Host comes, and so those people were from this era. Like, this is from this era. It could very well be that some of these people we see right now are in that Grey Host.
Yep. Although it was a green host, but whatever.
I mean. Yeah, you know what I mean.
The scrubbing bubble host to cleanse the castle.
All right, shall we talk about the dwarven struggle here?
Are we going to talk about the conversation about dead mothers? Or that comes after
now, or
that's with Isildur and Theo later, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and Astrid.
Yeah. There's Estrid, by the way. It's different
Astrid,
characters.
Yes, I keep typing.
There was an Astrid extra in season 1, and now there is an Estrid in season 2. Okay, so let's talk to the dwarven struggle. Narvi brings news to Doran 3 that the people will soon request the opening of the royal grain reserves, which will last about 3 months. Before they can come in, Doran 4 arrives to apologize to his father and bring him the offer from Celebrimbor. Doran 4 expresses his distrust of the power Celebrimbor offers, which I love that they flipped on its head, right? That Doran was all for helping the elves and trusting the elves first, and now he's like, okay, but this guy, not him.
Yes,
but you also see that, like, I actually like Doran 3 less now, because Doran 3 was all ready to be like, well, that's just the way of the world. The elves are just going to have to leave the world. But now that it's his people on the line, he's like, well, we have to do it now, right? So he's completely self-motivated. He's not, which, you know, you have to be a little bit self-motivated when you're a king, like for your own people. But
yes,
I mean, he really changes his tune quite quickly when it's his own people on the line.
And I think it's very brave of Prince Doran, who has just started to rebuild a very tentative bridge with his father, to quote his father's own words back at him.
Yeah.
I mean, he does it very well, but wow.
And it's extremely brave. I think the bravest thing he does here is apologize, right?
Of course. Of course.
Actually gives a genuine apology, even though he gets nothing back from his father.
Yeah, you noticed that, huh?
Yeah, okay. Well, we all have our father issues. It's fine.
He can. The father can say it to Disa. He can't say it to his son yet.
Right.
And I hope to goodness he gets a chance to before it all goes south.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Narvi seems to have come out of nowhere. I will say that. They didn't really introduce him. I don't even think they've named him in the show yet, but we know that is Narvi from the promotional materials.
Oh, yeah.
It's very strange.
No, it's quite clear that he's Narvi. Didn't one of the crowd call out his name at some point? I
don't recall.
Yeah, I think in the earlier episode, it's like, give your report now, Narvi, or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Narvi give your report.
Subtitles.
Oh, that.
It would help. But
Yep.
Alas.
It does help to reinforce the presence of names, doesn't it?
Yep. All right. Let's talk about Isildur and Theo. Theo treats Isildur's wound and laments his inability to save his mother from a poisoned orc arrow. Arondir expresses his relief at seeing Isildur and insists that Elendil did not abandon him. Arondir gives praise to Theo's healing skills and compares the loss of the Southlands to the destruction of Beleriand. Theo tries to sever his relationship with Arondir, then offers to help Isildur find Beric. Very sad.
Yeah. Theo is not having it. You're not my dad. So go away.
Yeah.
And you don't even know who my dad was.
Right.
Yeah. But how does Theo know where to find Beric? That's one of my questions.
My guess is he's just out in the woods, doing stuff.
Do you think he's actually hanging out with some of these?
Well, they didn't like him when he showed
Adar?
up. They didn't recognize him, so...
Well, he ran into the wrong bunch. I don't know.
Yeah. So...
I don't know. It's an interesting plot hole at this point. Maybe it will be explained subsequently. I mean, I could see it. Yes, he's wandering the woods and happens to oversee or happens to hear the horse or whatever.
He's good at tracking them or something,
Or out gathering herbs and things like that. Yeah. So anyway.
Right.
I like the big brother vibe that I'm getting from Isildur.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Towards Theo. And I think that's also a nice contributor to the character arc.
Yeah.
Well, but they both have dead mothers. And
so does Estrid.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean about the dead mother trope.
Mm-hmm.
It's a standard fairy tale convention. It's partly so that the child can then be free to go forth into the world and do things which they wouldn't do if they had living and responsible parents.
To say, hey, but reminds me of Larry David and Curb Your Enthusiasm when he tries to go to heaven at the end of one season because he dies in surgery or something, and his mother hits him so hard he goes back into his body and lives.
That's funny.
I mean, it's a good device as the sort of an emotional linkage between Isildur and Theo, like that.
Sure.
Did Estrid's mother really have to be dead too? I mean, obviously it makes sense in terms of what we are imagining her past to be, and interesting that she's trying to burn off the Adar symbol.
Right.
He won't like me if he thinks that I came from Adar. Or is she a deep spy? Is she deliberately planted to learn about what's going on in Pelagir for Adar. I don't know.
I do like the ambiguity here because there could be many reasons she's burning off that scar, some good, some bad.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And how is she going to account for it? Oh, I spilled some water over my back. I mean,
yeah.
I'm telling you, people are getting stabbed. They're burning their own flesh with red hot knives. These are pretty healthy people drinking water from. Everybody's good here.
Ever heard of dysentery?
Ponds polluted by dead bodies.
Right.
Hello,
right?
And a degree of burn from that hot knife on your back.
No, I don't want to think about this thing.
Right. Moving on.
Yeah. It's not great. Also, she doesn't really wait very long after they walk away. They kind of just get
that was
pretty much still in earshot. She's like, and I'm like, what are you doing, buddy? I feel like this is very loud.
Yeah.
They didn't turn back and go, is she okay?
Right. Exactly. What was that all about?
Yeah.
On the other hand, Estrid does seem to be showing better sense than Isildur.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Time and again, she's definitely more experienced in the whole rough and tumble and don't help the old man with the food and
Well, Isildur grew up in a privileged position,
precisely
in a privileged land, right? They
precisely
have filtered water and they have their their Brita filter aqueducts and I just saw a TikTok where somebody said I used a Brita filter when I was camping instead of getting actual purification. I got very sick. Don't do that. And I was like, what?
No,
no.
Just no.
That's all right. That's my advice to you people on listening. If you go camping, get actual water purification tablets or whatever else people actually recommend who do this instead of Brita filters, which are for your sink water.
It definitely shows a lack of knowledge of what actually happens from the water from the point it comes to the source to the point it comes out of your tap.
Yeah.
There are more things involved, unless it's your own well water, but even then.
Yeah. All right. Enough about water safety. Let's get to the next conversation, actually, that we kind of talked about a little bit already, but Isildur meeting Estrid. Estrid and Isildur share a fire and their survivor's guilt. Isildur admits he secretly swam out too far before his mother drowned, saving him. Thea watches the conversation and tears up before calling Isildur to him. Estrid burns Adar's mark off her neck. We kind of talked about it already, but I do think it's interesting that nobody knows, or at least he thinks nobody knows, that he was the reason his mother drowned.
Well, I think this is the primary motive that's driving him, right? And that's revealed now. And weren't we theorizing about what happened with her in season 1?
Mm-hmm.
So this is like a closing of that loop, so that we can actually get Isildur moving forward a little bit as a character.
Also, I mean, it's really interesting to me that she says, "I don't think you can live up to that. You need to treat it as a gift." That was very Tolkienian to me.
Definitely, and also very emotionally intelligent.
Yeah,
survival's guilt versus accepting the reality of the situation.
Right, and she did it because she loved you.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you were 10 or whatever it was, and sure, probably at some point somebody had said to you, "Don't swim out too far," and you're 10, you test boundaries, and golly, that was a really unfortunate one to test. I remember thinking at some point that she might have drowned as some sort of a reference to the faithful and a sacrifice, or not sacrifice by the faithful. That was what we were kind of speculating on.
Right.
By the Kingsmen, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And where is Anarion? Hello.
Great question. Wasn't he name checked once last season?
He was, yes.
So he does exist.
The family dinner.
Yeah.
The family dining out.
Yeah. At least he was name checked. He's not gone.
No. It'd be really nasty if they just decided he was one person too many to deal with, because, he certainly has plot armor as far as Tolkien is concerned.
Right.
Up to a certain point.
Going back half a step, I forgot to mention this a little bit earlier, but Marilyn, I had a question for you. When Isildur and Theo are talking, gathering water at the well thing, and Isildur says, well, it's an aqueduct. And of course, I immediately went to, all right, but apart from sanitation, medicine, education, wine, public order, irrigation, roads, the freshwater system, and public health, what have the Númenorians ever done for us?
Yeah.
So,
there you go.
That's a Monty Python line, John, from Life of Brian, if you didn't catch that reference.
I do like my Life of Brian, but I haven't watched it in a while.
Right. That's where they're having the meeting about, and somebody says, well, what has the Romans ever given us?
Ever done for us? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Nice catch.
Yep. That's good. All right. So Theo's captured next. Theo distracts the Adar acolytes. Adarlites? Anyone?
No.
Well,
it sounds like something you add to your water to get electrolyte.
To the aqueduct. It helps clean the aqueduct.
There we go.
So the Adar acolytes, Isildur releases Beric. The Adarlites are attacked by an unseen force, and Theo runs into something huge, dropping his sword and getting captured. Isildur escapes.
Bum, bum, bum. Tree people.
It was a tease.
It's probably the Entwives.
Right.
Almost certainly.
Yeah.
Almost certainly.
Because there was like brushy sounding, stompy sounds. And then obviously, he looks up like, what else? I mean, if it were, who's our troll buddy's name? Damrod. If it were Damrod, I think it would be a different reaction.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think by episode 6, the Entwife might finish introducing herself.
Maybe the Entwives talk a little faster than the Ents.
Episode 5, then.
Maybe that was part of their dilemma. Would you please slow down?
Let's get to the main event, I think, of this episode, the big plot twist before we, don't have any more access to screenage for another week. Or for, you know what I mean? Few days.
Till they deign to give them to us.
Exactly. The coronation in Númenor, Miriel is about to take the scepter held by the ruler on the island when Aarion arrives to accuse her, J'accuse, of using the Palantir. Pharazôn feigns support for the Queen Regent and offers to destroy it when she orders him not to. Elendil tries to take it for her, but is sent back by a burst of energy. An eagle arrives and Pharazôn approaches it, leading the people to take his side. Chant his name and everything.
Well, and it was the Lord from the North that starts the chant.
Yep.
Yeah. Beelzebub.
Yeah, he sees the opportunity and
seizes it.
Yes, exactly. And it's a question was Pharazôn just taken with the eagle, and like, gosh, I want to be close to this thing, like, or was he actually trying to use this? Was this like
he was improvising for sure.
Sure. But did he think it was going to try? That's kind of, but I don't know if he knew that it was going to result in him, having received the blessing, perceived to have received the blessing of the eagle, right? Because the eagle was like looking over at Miriel going, hey, who's this dude?
Right,
I came for you, not this guy.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And so flying away in that situation, maybe not the best of decision.
Right. Well, the only other thing you could have done is like peck at his head.
That gets messy. Yeah.
Throw him out
not
the
window.
Sort of
thing. Yeah. Not the sort of thing.
Shoof,
Yeah. Expect from Eagles of Manwë. Yeah. That whole thing was a bit more ambiguous to me than I thought it might have been.
Yeah. I thought it was definitely coding as a misinterpretation by the people that they were for him and they were really for Miriel.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
I mean, by that time, the whole thing had broken down anyway. So how are they supposed to know who the eagle came for? The eagle knew who he was coming for or she was coming for.
Right.
But it's the whole thing about who gets to interpret the signs and symbols.
Right.
Right.
And the first person to leap into the breach with an interpretation that favors themselves usually winds up being the winner. Another Greek reference that I got here, Aarion as Eris, the goddess of strife and discord, casting the apple of discord amongst the gods and goddesses of Greece and saying that the apple goes to the most beautiful of the goddesses.
Mm-hmm, right.
And you too can sign up for our Discord via the link tree in the show notes.
This is what starts the Trojan War, basically.
Right. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah,
so deep cut there, but wow, that's exactly what I thought of. And again, it seems somehow so sudden to me. But
I don't know. I think we saw some unrest with the people last season, right? This idea of this anti-elf.
Oh yeah,
bias.
no. I mean, Earian's.
Yeah. No, I'm fine with her changing that fast. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. How old do you think she is?
I think late teens, early 20s.
Okay, yeah, because some of the things she's doing seem very young to me.
Yeah, and but again, like, who hasn't had like when I was 17, I was yelling about libertarianism. That's just, like we go through these phases where we try to experiment with ideas, and unfortunately, she's in a position where she experiments with ideas. It's dangerous,
and she has incredible power.
Exactly.
To really mess things up.
Most of us get to experiment with ideas without doing permanent harm to the world. She, unfortunately, is doing it at a time. Like, I do think from the beginning, she expressed skepticism of the elves.
Yes. I mean, I think, of her own person, objected to the war.
Yeah.
And said so, and tried to get Kemen to convince his father to stop the war, and his father schools Kemen in the Machiavellian politics that he is following. At what point, I wish we could have seen a scene in which Farazan looked at his, less than satisfactory to him son's girlfriend and thought, okay, here's a way in.
Mm-hmm.
Because he had to have known that Elendil was of the faithful and would assume that all of his children were likewise. So it would have been interesting to see Farazan watching Earian and listening to her and realizing, oh, okay, maybe I have a weak spot here and I can nudge it along, and she's on the inside of a group that I need more information about, and she can bring this about in a way that will bring perhaps more of the former faithful to my side or something. I don't know. I'm speculating wildly here, but
yeah. No, I see what you're saying.
I would like to have seen one other scene in which Farazan considers Earian and her qualities and her use to him, because clearly that's all that's important to him.
Yeah, I think they were trying to make him a little bit more opaque last season.
Yeah.
Whereas we know where he's going, but perhaps you don't if you're watching the show only.
Yeah, that's true. It'd be interesting to hear from people who don't know any of the background of this whole thing, what they think of the characterization of Earian and Farazan. She seems so much less certain of herself.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole first season. And now all of a sudden she's talking with the most powerful men and throwing down, elvish forbidden objects and creating strife knowingly and all the rest of it. So,
if she's been, Kingsman faithful, if she's been Kingsman minded her whole life, and her dad and her brothers are saying, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. She finally has this new family to hang out in that says, you're right. Emboldened now, right?
Sure.
I think that's reasonable. Anyway, go ahead, David.
What was the deal with the blast of energy? Like, other people touch this thing, and he touches it. She drops it out of a cloth. But he touched it with his bare hands. So
you have to ask the showrunners, David. They're using the Palantiri in a way that are just completely outside the lore. So
okay,
we just don't have any reference points now.
No idea. It was very much like Sauron's blast at the beginning of episode 1.
That's a good point.
Yeah. It's an elvish artifact. I know no more.
Bum, bum, bum.
Made by perhaps Feanor. It's speculated in the Silmarillion. It's basically definitely Noldor, probably Feanor, people say.
Well, and Gandalf himself says, he and Pippin are galloping towards Minas Tirith, made possibly by the hand of Feanor himself. Yeah. Wouldn't I love to look into it and see the mind and hand of Feanor at work? So there was a pretty strong connection there, even before Silmarillion came out.
Nice. All right, let's talk about this last bit here. Sauron's rings, I'm going to call it. Durin 3, Durin 4, and Disa arrive with Mithril for the Dwarven rings. Celebrimbor takes the mithril, but Sauron, as Anatar, opens his hand for it and puts it into the forge. And I am so glad they did it that way.
Yeah.
Well, my first question is, or does he?
What do you mean?
He doesn't add it?
He stretched out his left palm. He receives the mithril in his left palm. He turns and puts, his right palm. He turns to put his right palm in his left palm, which is partially closed.
I took it as he did.
And drops the object into the forge without revealing to us what it is.
So you're saying a different substance?
It could be. That was my suspicion. Now, maybe I'm just being too suspicious of Sauron at this point. But why not just show the mithril glittering in his palm and him turning over the palm and dropping it in? The fact that the palms were closed said to me secrecy.
I see what you're saying there.
It's a little bit of a sort of 3-card Monty thing, right? Or the sleight of hand, a trickster sleight of hand.
Right. That's what I'm wondering. We know that Sauron loves mithril and covets it and orders the orcs to bring any that they find to him. But if they're drawing from that particular piece of lore, I don't know. But
I'm gonna have to go back and step through that.
Yeah,
scene.
watch it again, see what you think, and listeners, write in and let us know your thoughts on this. It felt suspicious.
I thought he was just doing some magic to it, and putting his will and his malice. What's the line?
Pouring all his cruelty and his malice.
Yeah.
No, you could be right.
Yeah, I just thought he wanted a hand in this forging here.
Yes, his will to dominate is probably the most important ingredient when you're talking making of rings.
Because in the books, we know he did not have a direct hand in the Elven rings, but all the other rings he had a direct hand in, which is why he's so much more easily dominating those.
And the showrunners are being a bit cute about exactly how much influence Halbrand had on the forging of the 3 rings.
Yeah.
And they seem to be pointing in both directions as we watch their effects on the current bearers of said rings.
I mean, I think, to me, I would say, I think it's perfectly reasonable to say the back door is there because he gave them the method, but because he didn't have a direct hand in it, he doesn't have the front door.
Mm-hmm. And you have the full range of Elrond's extreme skepticism and throw them in the ocean. And, Galadriel's, I feel that it is guiding me.
Mm-hmm.
Gil-galad so far seems a bit more in the middle and maybe not quite sure, but he's not taking it off his finger.
Yeah.
And Círdan saying, this is dangerous. And all power is dangerous.
Yeah.
Let's use it for good and make sure that it doesn't fall into the hands of someone who would use it for evil.
But Círdan was definitely grooving on having that ring. He was like, check this out. I can make these fish jump and do all this stuff. He was really enjoying it.
But he puts the fish back in. He says,
he does.
He says, look, this is what you could do to someone if you were able to dominate them.
Exactly.
But in our hands, we can put the fish back in the water.
Yes. Yeah.
That's actually a really good pull, actually. That's really important.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like he does do the hand trade-off, but then he sort of... No, he definitely has it in his hand when he drops it. It definitely goes in.
He has something in his hand.
He does something goes in his hand, but
which drops in.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I didn't read it other than... Because he kind of pauses and meditates with it in his hand before he drops it.
Adding some of his will to dominate.
Exactly. So I don't know that he pulled the switcheroo.
But he might not have included the mithril because he thought that if you follow the apocryphal story that it contains the light of the 2 trees in it from the Silmaril, maybe he doesn't want that kind of juice in there.
I think he does. I think because it's the light of Valinor, but it's also very powerful, and that's what he wants. I mean, even Morgoth, he was burned by the Silmarils, but he still wanted them.
Sure. But he saw the original product, didn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know. I could go either way on this, but I wondered why they chose that particular theatrically influenced method. I mean,
it could have been just blocking, where the shot set up and where the forge was.
Make him a little fancy.
Yeah.
He's like, I am the eldest boy, just like Kendall in Succession. All right, I'm done now. We've done the episodes, guys.
An hour and a half episode. That's a light episode.
Hey, we're getting good.
And I feel like we've gotten most of our thoughts on these first 3 episodes in.
Yeah.
Previous
and this
5
episode
hours.
didn't have like that much stuff in it. It had lots, but not in the same way.
Yeah.
It was
a lot of setup.
Density.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think, Marilyn, you're right. They could have, or who said they could have done 2 and not 3, and it would have been.
That was
fine.
me, I think.
Oh, okay.
That was David. Yeah. No, I'm all for all 3. And one thing I forgot to say earlier was the horror of what happened at Muriel's coronation. And her confusion and
yeah. Yeah, because she can't even see what's happening.
She
just
can't
knows
see.
Something wrong is happening.
And Elendil was pushed away from her, so he's not there at her elbow to tell her what's happening.
Right.
Right, and he was trying to get back to her. Yep.
And what's going to happen to her?
Yeah. And what is going to happen to her is the question. Is she...
Well, I think we saw some suggestions in trailers and whatnot.
I don't think she goes from number 1 to number 2, let's say.
I think...
Well, and given that they're cousins, I'm not sure I'd want her to anyway.
But that would be a pretty bad way for Farazone to start off by, having, a cousin side.
He's a master. He's not going to...
Right, he would... But
she's pretty unpopular right now.
She's unpopular,
find an indirect way to get rid of her.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying, is that he would be smarter than to do it, to let her be killed by a mob in this situation.
No.
There's more that he can use. There's more leverage that he can get out of her being alive than her being killed by a mob at the coronation.
Oh, no, she accidentally walked off a cliff.
Or into the water.
Yeah.
Not accidentally.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, right, because we do see that scene. That's true. So...
Well, everyone, it's been fun. We've done a lot of podcasts this week, and we finally come to the end of that run. If you're a subscriber, on Sunday morning, we're going to have the drop of the Lorecast. We're going to keep that on a midweek type of schedule, midweek in between the 2 drops. And otherwise, keep an eye out on the Patreon subscriber feed and the Supercast subscriber feed for the 11sies episode on V for Vendetta.
Right? We're recording that in a couple of days.
Mm-hmm. Other
it's
things
early
coming
enough.
out.
We finished recording tonight early enough that I could actually go watch some of it tonight.
There you go. Well, I still got to edit this. But all right. So on the Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast feed this week, we have Canon Ms. of the Old Republic with Marilyn Arpakila.
Yes,
Very
that
exciting.
was a lot of fun.
Part 1.
A lot of fun.
And on the Wool Shift Dust book club feed, I think that's Alicia's Supercast. She's got Dust Part 1, The Dig, and Part 2 Outside. So she's got a bunch of stuff happening on the Wool Shift Dust book club, I guess, ahead of Silo Season 2.
Yeah.
Good stuff. David, you've also got Alien stuff that people should keep an eye out for. Alien Romulus.
Yeah, everything's out except for the Alien Romulus thing, and we haven't scheduled that yet. But I was just checking. It looks like Alien Romulus is one of the second biggest film of the year so far.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Behind Inside Out too.
That would be, yeah. $229 million on an $80 million budget. So that's pretty good.
Wow.
Well, and then you also got Deadpool and Wolverine. So that's,
true.
And Dune 2.
3.
We had Dune 2 earlier this year.
Yeah, but I think that's a smaller audience.
Yeah, I don't think that one was as...
Not that it's not
high.
as good. I'm just, I think it's probably a smaller audience.
Strictly box
200
office.
million. Sorry, actually, box office was 1.6 billion for Inside Out 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's top.
Billion.
I think it's still
Yeah,
top.
billion.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, on a budget of 200 million. So they're doing well. They're doing well.
So that 229 must be, I think that might be domestic, not international.
Oh, okay.
So, because I think Inside Out 2, that must be, to hit billions, it's an international market.
Yeah.
So.
You are definitely right. Let's
Dune
see.
2 was
646 million in the United States, though.
Okay.
US and Canada. All right.
Dune 2 is showing 700 million. Anyway, this is not here nor there.
Yeah, what are we doing here? It's been a long week, everyone. Let's give quick thank yous here for our... I still have the jazz from last night. Sorry, everyone. We're doing the same music because I'm not loading up anything new.
Works for me.
Discord server boosters: Gnarls, Aaron K, Tiller the Thriller, Dork of the Ninjas, Dude71, Captain Gingy 56, Athena A, Adrian. Why am I saying Adrian these last 2 podcasts? Tina, Lestu, And our lore masters, Samartian, Michael G, Michelle E, David W, Brian P, SC, Peter OH, Bettina W, Adam S, Nancy M, Doof71, Brian 8063, Frederick H, Sarah L, Gareth C, Eric F, Matthew M, Sarah M, DJ Miwa, Andra B, Kwang Yu, Deadeye Jedi, Bob, Nathan T, Alex V, Aaron T, Sub-Zero, Aaron K, Dally V, Mothership 61, Gnarls, Kathy W, Stuart B, Jeffrey B, Elisa U, and Adrian. Thank you, everyone. It's always a pleasure to podcast with and for you. And we will be back bright and early next week. Amazon has now said that the embargoes stop at 9 a.m. So that's when episodes will drop on Thursdays. And looking forward to the rest of the season.
Thanks, everyone.
Lovely. Thanks.
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening.